I'm in White Gum Valley, near Fremantle, to meet Dave Broun, part of the Valley Vergers, a community group reclaiming their verges together. This is a big verge.
It is, Josh. It is around 400 square metres with the footpath, which is actually bigger than our house. It was all couch, a couch wasteland basically, and a few weeds. We weren't getting much in return. We were just mowing it. It was dusty, it was dry, and a bit of an eyesore, really. So the first thing we needed to do was to get rid of all of that couch and those weeds. And so we got a bobcat in, and we took the top 100 mil off and removed that out of the way completely. And
did that deal with most of the weeds?
It did. We had bits and pieces coming through over time, but we just had to be vigilant in pulling mainly the couch out. Yep. The garden, as you see it now, is about 2 years old. All the plants on this verge, more or less, are endemic, which means they're suited to the soil here and they'll grow well. We mainly planted tube stock. That's the most simple and cost-effective way, and they soon catch up to the other plants that are more expensive in bigger pots. We'd water a lot initially. We plant in winter, so we had the rainfall helping us out there. And then over summer, we'd water every 2 or 3 weeks, and after that, they're on their own. Well, things are really taking off. I couldn't help but spot a quandong up the back there. Yes, you've found the favourite plant in the garden, Josh. Absolutely. Should we take a look? Yeah. This is a really healthy young specimen, but so is its host, this Acacia saligna, as well. It is. So the quandong is hemiparasitic, which means that under the ground it's latching onto the roots of that saligna and getting all that nutrients and water to help it grow. Well, it's almost time to start pruning that acacia back, I reckon. It is. We'll slowly take that off and let the quandong grow, and in a few years we'll have people on the verge picking quandongs. You certainly will. I might pop around again then. Although only planted a couple of years ago, Dave's verge is now bursting with biodiversity, incorporating 350 individual plants, comprising around 100 different species in what was once barren space. There's an impressive array of eremophilas, kangaroo grass, as well as endemic Tuart trees, to continue the theme with older plantings in the street. One of the really great benefits has been the involvement of my daughter Stella in developing this garden, and seeing her sort of grow and understand all of the different plants and animals that have appeared since we started that verge. And I think that's in no small part one of the reasons why she's now studying landscape architecture at uni. David's daughter Stella and her friend Isaac are budding photographers and have been documenting wildlife in the Verge garden as it establishes. What types of fauna are you seeing in the Verge garden?
The most common fauna we find are small arthropods, invertebrates, and that includes slaters, ants, but some of the highlights are like the blue-banded bees and the peacock spiders that we find quite regularly now.
Stella, what inspired you to start to document the fauna on the Verge?
It's just really refreshing to come out here, and even in the morning, just spend some time out here and just walk through. It's just like a really lovely way to start your day, and when you start noticing little details, little like, as Isaac says, the biodiversity starts to increase and everything just comes alive, and that's kind of what really motivated me to start.
Directly opposite Dave's place is the home of fellow Valley Vergers, Ian and Daphne, who have taken a slightly different approach.
Our garden is a bit more curated than Dave's. I'm not sure that we started out with that in mind, but we were looking at trying to put some retaining walls in to keep the soil back and to stop runoff. And once we'd done the curved paths, then all the rest fell in behind that, and we sort of then picked up on that structure in designing the rest of the plantings.
Ian, you've mass planted largely, but there's still a lot of diversity in the garden?
Yes, there's probably somewhere between 500 and 600 plants, but I think there's 60 species.
What safety considerations were incorporated into the plant selection and layout of the garden?
We tried to follow the council's guidelines on verge planting, and that includes things like keeping the plants very low as you get close to the sight lines of the street. So it's safer for cars, safer for pedestrians. The only big plants are right back towards the house.
There's also been a really great community benefit, and that starts with when you're out here on the garden, people walk past and you just have a chat and talk about gardening and everything else. As more and more people in the valley have started growing verge gardens, we've really seen things snowball, and we've sort of come together as a loose group where we get together, we help people set up their own gardens and share plants and share stories, and it's just a great community process.
We've learnt a lot, for sure. It's certainly easier than lawn.
It can be as complex or as simple as you want.
Yeah.
We go about sharing knowledge from events like this on our verges, chatting, or it can be through our Facebook page.
It's inspiring to see how one community group can have such a positive impact on the streetscape of a suburb, bringing the benefits of cooling, wildlife habitat and creating connections to one another along the way. Check your local council requirements before planting out a verge. And remember, know the location of services both above and below ground, and dial before you dig.